To extend the patio season as the weather gets colder.
We just decided to block the wind instead of warming it up, to be honest.
Restaurants and bars are coming up with different ways to keep patrons warm as winter approaches. But do they meet city guidelines? Plus,
we need more people to download the app.
The province's COVID alert app was launched in the summer. 3 months in, how many people are using it and just how effective has it been? And
residents living around these streets in Fort York say they've been in the dark for too long.
It's increasingly getting scary, and to not have lights doesn't make me feel safe, and particularly as a woman.
I'm Talia Ricci, and we look into why there aren't any street lights in this area and when that's expected to change.
And that is where we begin tonight. Good evening, I'm Kelda Yoon. Residents in Fort York say they're fed up after going years without light on their street. The area's councillor says it's due to ongoing legal issues between the developer and Toronto Hydro. Talia Ricci gets to the bottom of it.
You can't avoid city lights in most parts of downtown Toronto, but in this area of Fort York, residents say there's been a lack of light here for years.
It's only 7 p.m. right now, but it feels really dark.
Community is very important, and when you're walking by somebody and you can't even see them and they're your neighbor, it doesn't really make you feel like you're in a safe place, which is your home, and we should all feel safe in our home.
Safety and accessibility are two of the big concerns for people who live in the area. I'm honestly even a little bit nervous about my camera operator walking backwards right now. And residents say they've tried multiple ways to shed light on the issue.
I was about to come out just with my kid, but I didn't feel safe, so I had to bring my husband with me.
I know many people have written into appropriate groups. Many people have written into Toronto Hydro. They've had their property management groups address the developer.
Area Councillor Joe Cressy says he's working on it, saying the developer of the adjacent condo construction was responsible for delivering this work and that he understands that Toronto Hydro continues to have concerns that the work was not completed to safe standards, allowing the streetlights to be connected to the electrical grid. Toronto Hydro says the fixtures are owned and maintained by the developer and haven't been handed over to them yet.
And really, it's just a bunch of finger pointing with no answers.
The current developer is Ani Group. They got back to us in an email and said it assumed responsibility for some of the lighting surrounding Fort York earlier in the year, adding some of this lighting was required to be removed due to the active construction site, and with nearby construction wrapping up, new lighting will be placed back on the street and operational within the next few weeks.
My response would be, hallelujah, could you do it a little quicker, because we've been waiting a long time, and thank you.
Crosby and other residents in the area hoping that Toronto Hydro gets the green light soon. Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
As the weather gets colder, many restaurants and bars are pulling out all the stops to make sure their patios stay warm. And the city is also looking at extending its Patio program to help business owners. But as Greg Ross reports, winterizing the patio can be costly. There are also city guidelines to follow.
Cafe Diplomatico on College Street has always had a popular patio. These days, owner Rocco Mastriangelo says it's essential to the survival of his business. But as the temperature continues to drop, his cost to heat the patio with propane lamps is skyrocketing.
The propane's costing us on average about $3,000 a month.
The patio at Cafe Diplomatico is covered by an awning and 3 sides are open, which meets with the city's current COVID-19 guidelines that say at least 2 sides must be open to the outdoors. But Mastriangelo says that's not the case everywhere.
There's a lot of people that have actually went out and either rented or bought frame tents where they come down with walls, either clear plastic or vinyl, and basically they've enclosed it completely.
This video was posted on Twitter yesterday. It was recorded on the patio at Regulars on King West, which now has a tent over its patio. The owner of Regulars did not want to talk to us on camera today, but we did raise the issue with City Councillor Brad Bradford, who was part of the committee in charge of extending Patio.
The conversation about heaters and winter protection is a separate one, but this certainly lays the groundwork quite literally in that it is permitting the patio for those to continue.
There's lots of space to move around. There's lots of, 6 people have comfortably sat at these tables for a long time.
In the meantime, at Penny's Bar on Strawn Avenue, manager Katie Vaughn says they have set up 5 smaller tents on their patio that can seat groups of up to 6 people.
You really do feel like you're in your own private space.
And while at this point it's not clear if the city will allow something like this, Vaughn says they feel they're doing their part to keep customers safe.
We feel with the airflow, the space, the distancing between other customers, and our, the way we're taking care to clean up after, I can't imagine that this would be, frowned upon.
I did speak with city staff today, and they tell me they're just following the guidelines that are being put forth by the province and Toronto Public Health. And right now, indoor dining is prohibited. So even a situation like the one at Penny's restaurant would not be allowed. But many restaurant owners tell me they want the city to re-examine those guidelines and see if there's anything they can do to help. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
St. Michael Hospital is dealing with a COVID-19 outbreak in their emergency department. In a statement on their website, the hospital says as of this morning, October 20th, there are 5 active COVID-19 positive staff related to this outbreak. No patient cases have been identified to date. In our investigation into the positive staff cases, we have determined that the risk of patient exposure is low. The hospital says it will contact any patients who had direct contact with any of the affected staff. And this is just the latest COVID-19 outbreak at a Toronto healthcare facility. Toronto Western Hospital, St. Joseph's Health Centre, and the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health are all experiencing outbreaks. The province recorded 821 new cases of COVID-19 today. That is the second highest on a single day since a resurgence of the virus in mid-August. Meanwhile, testing continues to lag behind. Just over 24,000 tests were completed yesterday. That's the lowest number of tests the province has processed in one day since September 9th. And it's less than half of the 50,000 tests the province aims to be processing by mid-October. This is what Premier Ford had to say about those testing numbers.
We're geared up. We have the capacity now to do upwards to 50,000 and people aren't coming in. So I don't know if that's good news, bad news, but maybe people aren't showing the symptoms. And well, if you're showing symptoms, please come in and get tested. That's the most important thing. We just haven't been able to get enough people there, and anyone who's coming is getting tested and getting results pretty very quickly.
The province hopes to be able to process as many as 68,000 tests per day by mid-November. Meanwhile, the number of confirmed active infections of the coronavirus in Ontario is at 6,237, an all-time high. Turning to the situation in schools, Ontario reported 121 new school-related COVID-19 cases today. Public health officials in Toronto say schools haven't been a significant contributor to the second wave of the virus. But as Chris Glover reports, some parents and doctors are still concerned.
Fun, safe schools!
Rage reached a fever pitch by the end of summer as parents, teachers, and unions mocked the government's back-to-school plan.
It just seemed like we were on a train heading for a giant train wreck.
About a month in, and Toronto Public Health with a report card.
School reopenings are not significant contributors to our recent climb in cases.
Public Health reports Toronto's second wave started prior to school's return, and children are a minor factor of it.
So the relatively small increase in that time could certainly have been influenced by the increase in testing and school screening policies.
In August, TDSB identified 80 schools as at risk with COVID. Currently, only 25 of them have active cases, all with fewer than a handful of infections.
Drawing any sort of positive conclusion, I think, is so premature because so few children have returned to in-person learning in the COVID hotspots in this city.
Mom of 2 and school infrastructure funding activist Krista Wiley also worries outside learning and open windows soon won't be an option.
When we move into -20 weather, that may not be a comfortable option for learning. So then we're relying on a ventilation system that actually doesn't exist.
Picking up on that concern, today the provincial government announced $500 million in funding, partly to renovate ventilation systems in schools.
Now more than ever, it's important to get these projects off the ground.
And even with the weather still decent, of Ontario's 821 new cases today, 121 are school-related.
That it seems like a low number, but when you compare 121 to the total, that's a substantial number, a substantial percentage, keeping in mind that a lot of these kids are not being tested. So the actual number is probably much higher.
This pediatric infectious disease specialist worries children are secret spreaders. Since their symptoms are so minor, public health doesn't know about them because they aren't being tested. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
Ontarians have been able to download and use the COVID Alert app since July. The app warns users if they have been exposed to someone with a confirmed case of the virus. But CBC News has learned that only a fraction of people who caught the virus have been using the app. Mike Crawley reports.
Roughly 80% of Canadians have a smartphone, so there was great hope that a smartphone app could help in the fight against COVID-19. Ask people at random if they have Canada's COVID Alert app. It's hard to find someone who does.
No.
How come?
Didn't even know about it.
No, I don't.
How come?
I'm busy. I don't feel that compelled to get it.
No. How come?
Just never heard about it.
I have not.
How come?
Because I keep a good social distance. I tend not to go where there's people, and I don't really see the need.
We need more people to download the app. It's a very privacy focused. There's no way that you can be identified.
Since the app was launched in late July, Ontario has confirmed some 25,000 cases of COVID-19, but only 5% of those have actually used the app to report their infections.
I think there's a bit of a catch-22 here where people are reluctant to download the app because they may not perceive it to be effective. But at the same time, it's not going to be as effective if people don't download it.
COVID Alert works when you're within 2 meters of someone else with the app. Your phones exchange encrypted signals via Bluetooth, but no personal details. If one of you later tests positive for COVID-19, you get a special code to enter into the app. Other users you've been close to get an alert that they may have been exposed. Even though the majority of smartphone users have not downloaded the COVID Alert app, public health experts say it still serves a useful purpose.
Potentially it's a very large number of people whose behavior has been changed, and we have a difficult time knowing exactly what its benefit is. I suspect it's much larger than those numbers show.
We're getting some evidence that it is working. With any kind of digital tool, it takes some time to have uptake and to get trust.
The COVID Alert app has been downloaded to some 4.7 million phones across Canada. It's not known how many of those downloads have been to phones in Ontario. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
The Ford government is moving to protect businesses, healthcare providers, and organizations from getting sued inadvertently spreading the virus.
If you go and get advice from public health and you honestly and in good faith implement it, you should have protection. And I think people accept that. It doesn't protect bad actors. It doesn't protect gross negligence.
CBC News was first to report back in June that the province was considering granting some immunity from COVID-19 related lawsuits. This afternoon, the Attorney General introduced a bill. If passed, supporting Ontario's Recovery Act 2020 will protect anyone who sincerely tries to follow public health guidelines from being sued for spreading the virus. The legislation still allows for suits where public health rules were willfully ignored. The group representing the bulk of Ontario's nursing homes had asked for this legislation. The province says it does not give an escape clause to homes that are negligent. In a historic agreement, Peel Regional Police is partnering with the Ontario Human Rights Commission to tackle systemic racism within its force.
This year, out of all years, has been a challenging one for policing, for the community, and for many sectors. And we want to acknowledge that systemic racism exists across all systems.
The two parties have signed a memorandum of understanding to develop and implement legally binding measures to end racial discrimination in policing. The Ontario Human Rights Commission says it will provide guidance to Peel Police and work closely with them to develop holistic remedies based on its human rights principles. A commitment was also made to engage with the Black community and other racialized communities before finalizing an agreement. After the break, former Premier Kathleen Wynne is leaving politics. Details on that and Doug Ford's tribute to his former rival coming up. Plus,
well, the weather this week is going to keep you hopping with what you need with umbrellas and layers and then peeling those layers off. I'm meteorologist Colette Kennedy. After the break, I'm going to walk you through it all.
former Premier Kathleen Wynne says she will not be running for re-election in 2022. Having spent nearly 2 decades in the Ontario legislature, Wynne today had some words of encouragement for anyone thinking about going into politics.
Is so worth it. You can change people's lives. You do change people's lives just by the act of putting your name on a ballot. You are an example, you're a role model, and you can help people through their lives.
Wynne will remain the MPP for Don Valley West until 2022. She served as Premier from 2013 to 2018, the first woman to hold that job in the province's history. Speaking to reporters today, Wynne said while she's critical of some of the decisions Doug Ford has made during the pandemic, she believes he has risen to the challenge of the crisis. In question period today, Premier Ford also paid tribute to Wynne.
Premier, I have the utmost respect for you. We may differ on policies, we may differ on political outlooks, but as a person, I have the utmost respect for you. She blazed a new trail being the first woman premier. She blazed a new trail by being the first gay premier.
Wynne was first elected to the legislature in 2003. And it's partly cloudy tonight, just like much of the day. The rain is holding off, though. Colette Kennedy joins us now with your full look at the forecast. Colette, I know that's going to change. We do have some wet weather on the way.
Thanks, Kelda. You know, we have so many different systems working their way through, and the timing is different with each one. So I'll kind of give you the idea of how you're going to deal with these. So for this next one, it's rain developing overnight tonight towards the morning hours. And so you're going to need the umbrella, whatever color yours might be. I made mine purple. And then for tomorrow afternoon, we actually get into some clearing. And because of that, the winds are going to be a little bit gusty from the southwest, but it's going to make for some mild temperatures before the cold front pushes through. Then Thursday is kind of a split decision, but the rain showers are mostly for the second half of the day. But Friday, I want you to start planning. Yes, with COVID, we have to be very careful in terms of how we're doing things outdoors and make sure we're social distancing, but it's going to be a nice day with temperatures in the low 20s. It may be the last day we see low 20s in those temperatures until next spring. So you do want to be able to do something if you can be outdoors safely. All right, this is this next system working its way through. So through the overnight towards tomorrow morning, we get the rain showers, but look how quickly it moves through. Because of that, we get some clearing towards tomorrow afternoon. So high pressure on its heels clears things back out. Again, a little bit breezy, however. And then as we go towards Thursday, we see the cloud cover rolling back in, but the precipitation from the next one should be light in nature, what we see, and it's mostly for the second half of the day on Thursday. Again, not much with that one. This is more so for what we're going to see with the system coming through tonight into tomorrow morning. Could be a few embedded thunderstorms. You might hear the rumble of thunder. So in those areas locally, it might be more than that 5 to 10 millimeters of rainfall. Just keep that in mind. And by the way, that one system coming in on Friday, it gives us that beautiful day, but late Friday, it will close the door. Cooler air will move in for the weekend. All right, overnight tonight, you'll actually see those temperatures rising towards morning for southwestern Ontario, also that thunderstorm risk tomorrow afternoon. Again, seeing those temperatures kind of close to seasonal, just a tiny bit above there. And then overnight tonight, around the Golden Horseshoe, those temperatures do kind of remain almost steady, and then coming up a little bit towards morning. With the clearing into the afternoon, you might have to wait a little bit longer for it in a few areas like the Niagara region, but it will be coming, and then that's when the temperature pops up a little more. Thursday, that sort of situation where it's drier early and then some lighter showers into the afternoon. Friday should be primarily dry till late in the day, 22 degrees. You are reading that correctly. But then, as I say, the door closes, meaning we'll see those winds shifting towards the north to northwest. Some cold air will move in for the weekend. And yes, we're going to see highs that are in the single digits and some cooler overnights, especially that temperature that's going to be rolling in here for Saturday night into Sunday morning. Kelda.
Thanks, Colette. 22, wow. And when we come back, we meet this year's Polaris Music Prize winner.
Careful where you stand, I'm taller, I live it stronger, I lift you up from your feet. Don't tell me I didn't warn you. Tell me don't raise my voice.
This is Montreal-based rapper Backwash. Her album, God Has Nothing to Do with This, Leave Him Out of It, beat out 9 other contenders for the $50,000 prize. Hear more from her about the big win next.
The weather is brought to you by Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. It's hard to stop a train.
Montreal-based rapper Backwash has taken home this year's Polaris Music Prize.
Careful where you stand, I'm taller, I'm even stronger. I lift you up from your feet. Don't tell me I didn't warn you. Tell me don't raise my voice.
Her album, God Has Nothing to Do with This, Leave Him Out of It, beat out 9 other contenders for the $50,000 prize. Backwash is the stage name of performer Ashanti Mutinta. She is the first Black transgender woman to win the Polaris Prize. CBC spoke to her about what it was like when she heard her name called out for the award.
I didn't believe it because it's, it takes some time for it to sink in. So I didn't believe it. Even when they announced it, I guess it took some time for it to be like, oh wow, we actually did it. I'm very motivated now. I'm just gonna continue putting up scary, spooky music, and I'm gonna go back into the studio ASAP. Well, I was always into metal and hip hop growing up, and when I came to Canada for school, I kind of stopped. And then I started again when I was 25 years old, and it was just a situation of blending in all of these experiences and influences that I've collected throughout my life. It's almost like opening my storybook and putting it out there for everyone to see, and the presentation, be it dark, is what's expected. It's symbolic in terms of, I was able to be myself and just put music out there like this. And I hope it sheds a spotlight on other people, other Black trans people, and just Black people in general who, are trying to do this, especially in this climate of such disturbance.
And that's our show for you tonight. Have a great night.